Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We'll start this evening with Dialogue 427. A disciple asked, "It is said that the universe consists of light and sound. Are these two constituents like the light and sound in the physical world? Can they be seen and heard with the physical organs, eye and ear? Or are they to be experienced only subjectively?" Sri Bhagavan replies, "Light and sound correspond to nada and bindu in tantric terminology, and to the mind and life current in the Vedantic. They are gross, subtle, and transcendental. The organs can perceive the gross aspect. The other aspects are not so perceptible. The subtle can be inferred, and the transcendental is only transcendental." The disciple asked, "Hinduism lays down reincarnation of the jiva. What happens to the jiva during the interval between the death of one body and the birth of the next one?" Sri Bhagavan replies, "Solve this question by referring to the state of sleep. What happens to you in sleep?" The disciple said, "I do not know." Sri Bhagavan replies, "Yet you exist. Therefore existence beyond knowledge and ignorance is indicated. Although ignorance was prevailing according to your present idea, yet you did not say so in sleep. You continue to exist all the same. Mere ignorance does not rule out the fact of your existence." The disciple asked, "In the practice of meditation, are there any signs of the nature of subjective experience or otherwise which will indicate the aspirant's progress toward self-realization?" Sri Bhagavan replies, "The degree of freedom from unwanted thoughts and the degree of concentration on a single thought are the measure to gauge the progress." The disciple asked, "Is it necessary to take to sannyasa for self-realization?" Sri Bhagavan replies, "Sannyasa is to renounce one's individuality. This is not the same as tonsure and ochre robes. A man may be a grihi, householder. Yet if he does not think he is a grihi, he is a sannyasi. On the contrary, a man may wear ochre robes and wander about. Yet if he thinks he is a sannyasi, he is not that. To think of sannyasa defeats its own purpose." The dialogue continues, but let's start with that much. The experiences one seems to undergo are determined in their character by the stand taken by the experiencer. So if you think of yourself as a sensing embodied being with gross form, then you perceive gross phenomena. If the form of the experiencer is subtle, then the phenomena are subtle. If the standpoint is transcendental, then there is neither experiencer nor the object of experience, but just that. He says the organs can perceive the gross aspect. The other aspects are not so perceptible. That which is not perceptible to the senses, yet is not transcendental, is termed subtle. However defined, how would it be possible to know the nature of the universe, which the questioner began asking about, without first knowing oneself? And if one knows oneself, what universe is there? For the transcendental, there's only the transcendental. For Brahman, there is just Brahman. For the self, there is just the self, and no phenomena whatsoever. The next question was about reincarnation. What happens to the jiva during the interval between the death of one body and the birth of the next one? Bhagavan tells him to solve this question by referring to the state of sleep. What happens to you in sleep? Deep dreamless sleep is that which is referred to. You have no body, you have no senses. You might as well be dead. But you exist. What is the nature of that existence? What happens to you in sleep? You do not cease to exist. There is no thought of it, but existence remains. Inherent in existence is its knowledge of itself, which is not the knowledge of the duality of ignorance and knowledge. What happens to you in sleep? Well, the devotee said, I do not know. And Sri Bhagavan said, yet you exist. Therefore, existence beyond knowledge and ignorance is indicated. Waking state seems to be knowledge. Sleep seems to be ignorance. The reality lies beyond both. Therefore, existence beyond knowledge and ignorance is indicated. Although ignorance was prevailing, according to your present idea, that is, one says that ignorance prevails in deep sleep only from the perspective of the waking state. You do not say so in sleep itself. One is so accustomed to conceiving of his thinking as being knowledge. That he thinks that thought-free existence is ignorance. It is not so. Although ignorance was prevailing according to your present idea, yet you did not say so in sleep. You continue to exist all the same. Mere ignorance does not rule out the fact of your existence. So your existence is uninterrupted, unmodified, unchanged always, which means it is without beginning and without end, hence unborn and imperishable. If you would know yourself as existence alone, as a result of profound self-inquiry, that itself, by itself, would suffice for blissful immortality. The disciple then asked, in the practice of meditation, are there any signs of the nature of subjective experience or otherwise, which will indicate the aspirant's progress towards self-realization? Sri Bhagavan graciously answers the question like this. The degree of freedom from unwanted thoughts and the degree of concentration on a single thought are the measure to gauge the progress. Unwanted thoughts. Freedom from them is the progress. Which thoughts are unwanted? As long as they're regarded as real, all of them are unwanted. Specifically those that impose limitation on your identity, confusion regarding the self and the non-self, are unwanted. The degree one retains the spiritual instruction and can give his focus entirely, concentratively to that, is also a sign of progress. The degree of freedom from unwanted thoughts. This is the gauge of progress in the inquiry to know oneself. Mere concentration on a single random thought is not what is intended here. Understand it as a single-minded inquiry to realize the truth that is transcendent of all thought. This is the indicated meaning. The next question was, is it necessary to take to sannyasa for self-realization, to take renunciation? Sri Bhagavan defines sannyasa as follows. Sannyasa is to renounce one's individuality. If sannyasa is understood to be renunciation of one's individuality, then yes, of course it is necessary for self-realization. This is not the same as tonsure and ochre robes and cutting up one's hair, etc. That's not the renunciation. Renunciation is freedom from individuality. He continues to explain, a man may be a grihi, yet if he does not think he is a grihi, he is a sannyasi. If a person, apparently outwardly engaged in active life and such, renounces inwardly the individuality, They are, in truth, a sannyasa. On the contrary, a man may wear robes and wander about, yet if he thinks he is a sannyasi, he is not that, because he's retaining his sense of individuality. To think of sannyasa and to think of oneself as a sannyasi defeats its own purpose, because the purpose is loss of individuality. Let there be egolessness, with or without the robes. The robes don't free, the robes don't bind. Misidentification as an individual gives the illusion of bondage. The disappearance of the assumption of individuality reveals the truth. That is a necessity for all. Sri Bhagavan remarked, people see the world. The perception implies the existence of a seer and the seen. The objects are alien to the seer. The seer is intimate, being the self. They do not, however, turn their attention to finding out the obvious seer, but run about analyzing the seen. The more the mind expands, the farther it goes and renders self-realization more difficult and complicated. The man must directly see the seer and realize the self. The disciple then said, so then it amounts to synthesizing phenomena and finding the one reality behind. Sri Bhagavan replies, why do you still consider the phenomena? See who the seer is. Synthesis means engaging the mind in other pursuits. That is not the way to realization. The disciple said, I want to eliminate the non-self so that the self may be realized. How shall I do it? What are the characteristics of the non-self? Sri Bhagavan replies, there is one who says that the non-self must be eliminated. Who is he? The disciple said, I mean this man. When I travel from Calcutta to Madras, I must know Madras so that I may not alight at an intermediate station out of ignorance. There are the signboards and the timetable to guide me in my travel. But what is the guide in my search for the self? Sri Bhagavan replied, it is all right for the journey. You know how far away you are from Madras. Can you tell me how far away you are from the self in order that you should seek it? The disciple said, I do not know. Sri Bhagavan responds, are you ever divorced from the self? Is it possible to be divorced? Are not all these alien to you, and the self the most intimate? Where should you go to gain the self? The disciple said, I am now away from the self. I must retrace my steps in order to regain it. Sri Bhagavan replies, how far away? Who says that he is apart? Can there be two selves? The disciple said, it is said that individuals are modifications of the self, just as ornaments are of gold. Sri Bhagavan replies, when a man speaks in terms of ornaments ignoring their substance gold, he is told that they are gold. But here the man is consciousness and speaks of himself as its modification. Do you remain apart from the self that you speak of yourself as its modification? The disciple said, cannot gold be imagined to say that it has become an ornament? Sri Bhagavan replies, being insentient, it does not say so. But the individual is sentient and cannot function apart from consciousness. The self is pure consciousness, yet the man identifies himself with the body, which is itself insentient, and does not say, I am the body of its own accord. Someone else says so. The unlimited self does not. Who else is he that says so? A spurious eye arises between the pure consciousness and the insentient body, and imagines itself limited to the body. Seek this, and it will vanish as a phantom. That phantom is the ego, or the mind, or the individuality. All the Shastras are based on the rise of this phantom, whose elimination is their purpose. The present state is mere illusion. Disillusionment is the goal and nothing more. The disciple said, the mind is said to be a bundle of thoughts. Sri Bhagavan replies, because it functions on account of a single root, the I thought. Then Sri Bhagavan quoted a verse from Upadeshasara in Sanskrit. Manasam tu kim margine krite neva manasam vargar jiva. Translated is, what then is the mind? Upon seeking, there is not indeed the mind. This is the direct path. Continuing, Bhagavan said, it has no real existence as a separate entity. The disciple said, are not thoughts projections from the mind? Sri Bhagavan replies, in that case, the mind is taken to be synonymous with the I thought, or the ego. Bhagavan started his instructions saying this: people see the world. The perception implies the existence of a seer and the seen. The objects are alien to the seer. The seer is intimate, being the self. They do not, however, turn their attention to finding out the obvious seer, but run about analyzing the seen. What is the nature of the seer? It was mentioned earlier that the seen always corresponds to the definition of the seer. What is the definition of the seer? Perception of the world does not prove the reality of the seen. It merely proves existence, which is the true nature of the seer. The previous questions raised by the disciple were concerned with the seen, the phenomena of light and sound, etc. But is realization to be approached in such a way? Self-realization consists of non-objective knowledge. Such knowledge is transcendent of the duality of seer and seen. The more the mind expands, that is to say, conceives, the farther it goes and renders self-realization more difficult and complicated. A man must directly see the seer and realize the self. The seen has no existence apart from the knowing of the seer. Trace inwardly from the seen to the seer, and inquire into to know the very nature of the seer. Do not expect self-realization to come to you as if it were some phenomenon removed from you. It is not like that at all. You must directly see the seer and realize the self. When the seen is no longer taken to be your identity or reality, what remains of the seer? Wholly indivisible consciousness, formless and infinite. Bhagavan said, "Why do you still consider the phenomena? See who the seer is." Overlooking the seer and trying to define the seen, that's not the way to realization. Relinquish the objectifying tendency, and with non-objective knowledge inquire, to know the knower, to see the seer. Then the disciple asked, "I want to eliminate the non-self so that the self may be realized. How shall I do it? What are the characteristics of the non-self?" While the disciple's question is certainly in keeping with Vedanta, the Maharshi, also in keeping with Vedanta, points out directly, there is one who says that the non-self must be eliminated. Who is he? If you've confused the non-self for the self, who knows that? If you know you need to eliminate the non-self, who is it that knows? How shall I do it? An inquiry to the one who says the non-self must be eliminated is precisely how to do it. Who is he? Self-realization consists of self-knowledge, and for self-knowledge there can be no better way than persistent direct inquiry. Who are you? The disciple replied, "I mean this man." That is, he's still misidentified with the body and the mind and such. When I travel from Calcutta to Madras, I must know Madras so that I may not alight at an intermediate station out of ignorance. There are the signboards and the timetable to guide me in my travel. But what is the guide in my search for the self? Sri Bhagavan replies, "It is all right for the journey. For an outer journey in an external world, you need timetables and signboards and all such. You know how far away you are from Madras, and then you can make plans on reaching such a place. Can you tell me how far away you are from the self in order that you should seek it? What is sought is actually the very nature of the seeker. So in terms of self-realization, the analogy is incompatible and not accurate at all. Can you tell me how far away you are from the self in order that you should seek it? The nature of the seeker is what is sought. There is no separation between yourself and the self. Just one self is. By inquiry to know the self, this knowledge shines. The disciple replied, I do not know. Sri Bhagavan continued to instruct, are you ever divorced from the self? Is it possible to be divorced? Are not all these alien to you? All that is objective, from thoughts to the forms of the phenomenal world. Are not all these alien to you, and the self the most intimate? Where should you go to gain the self? If you could go anywhere, it would not be the self. And if you are the self, there is not anywhere any alternative to that. The self is only one, and it is invariable. The disciple continued, saying, I am now away from the self. I must retrace my steps in order to regain it. Sri Bhagavan replies, how far away? Who says that he is apart? Can there be two selves? Where is the distance between you and your existence? A separation is not possible. Nor can there actually be two of you. Existence is invariably singular. Thus, there is no one apart, no one separate. No one but the one self exists. The disciple's next question was, it is said that individuals are modifications of the self, just as ornaments are of gold. he has drawn the wrong conclusion from this classical analogy, Vedanta. Sri Bhagavan clears the matter up for him, saying, when a man speaks in terms of ornaments, ignoring their substance, gold, he is told that they are gold, thereby being taken beyond multiplicity and being established in that which is one and unmodified. But here the man is consciousness and speaks of himself as its modification. That is, that a division is made between one's being and one's consciousness, although actually they are one and the same thing. There is no consciousness apart from being, and there's no being apart from consciousness. Do you remain apart from the self that you speak of yourself as its modification? Are you not truly the consciousness itself? To imagine that you are separate from it, or a modification of it, and the need to get back to it, is ignorance. To know yourself as the self, and the self alone to exist, is wisdom. The disciple then questioned, cannot gold be imagined to say that it has become an ornament? Sri Bhagavan says, being insentient, that is gold itself is insentient, does not say so. But the individual is sentient and cannot function apart from consciousness. One thing that is being pointed out here by Sri Bhagavan is that we should comprehend instruction in the form of analogies only to the extent the analogies are meant to direct you to. You should not expand the meaning beyond that. So he says, but the individual is sentient, unlike modifications of gold, ornaments, and cannot function apart from consciousness. The self is pure consciousness, pure in that it is unalloyed with anything else whatsoever. And it is always like that. For if it were to change and be mutable, it would be unreal. The self is pure consciousness. Yet the man identifies himself with the body, which is insentient, and does not say, I am the body of its own accord. Who has the concept of I am the body? The body is insentient and does not say, I am the body. The self is absolute and has no ignorance. So for whom is the ignorance? Someone else says so. The unlimited self does not. The self has no ignorance. Who else is he that says so? A spurious I arises between the pure consciousness and the insentient body, and imagines itself limited to the body. So a false assumption of individuality appears, which is not at all real, as if it were existing between pure consciousness and the body, and then further imagines itself to be the body. Such is merely illusion, and not the truth at all. Seek this, and it will vanish as a phantom. The one thing the ignorant ego cannot stand is an inquiry to know its own nature. One so much as inquires to know it as it vanishes, being completely unreal. What remains is the ever-existent, self-existent, being and consciousness bliss. That which remains has been true always. That phantom is the ego, or the mind, or the individuality. The three are the same. The idea of it being a separated being, another consciousness separated from the infinite consciousness, called the mind. Some supposedly existing individuality, particularized existence. That is unreal. All the Shastras, that is, all the sacred scriptures, are based on the rise of this phantom, the ego notion, whose elimination is their purpose. They are not there to provide proof of the ego's existence. The teachings are there as a way of pointing out the ego's non-existence. And we should read them accordingly. The present state is mere illusion. Disillusionment is the goal and nothing more. If illusion is destroyed by inquiry, which is not the destruction of any real thing, what remains is the reality, which knows itself eternally. The disciple said, "The mind is said to be a bundle of thoughts." Sri Bhagavan replies, "Because it functions on account of a single root, the I thought. That root is implicit in all the various forms of thought. But it is not a real entity. To see the mind's non-existence is the direct path. It has no real existence as a separate entity. If that is so, how could ignorance survive? That there has ever been anything but the self is mere illusion. The final question was, are not thoughts projections from the mind? Sri Bhagavan replies, in that case the mind is taken to be synonymous with the I thought or the ego. Call it ego, call it I thought, call it the mind, or by any other term. Such do not name any real thing. Inquire within, who am I? Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.